Double P Podcast is proud to present
Z, the first podcast after you watch
Y the Last Man. My name's Bubba, and with me, as always, is somebody who has to learn the meaning of the word ampersand. It's Catfish. Catfish, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm Catfish. I'm happy to be here with a man who deserves a medal for all he's done.
Oh, ouch. Ouchie. Guys, we are reviewing Y the Last Man, Episode 3, entitled Neil, or as I like to call it, Black Hawk Down.
Oh. Ouch.
Catfish, what is your ranking out of 10 for this episode?
I'm going to give this 8, what I like to call double P/double H's.
Double P/double H's?
Yes, that's obviously Phantom Pushers / Hamilton haters.
Oh, man. Why do you... 8 is a pretty good number. Why so high?
8's a good number. I really feel like they're putting things together. They added this very interesting bit of information that will spice things up, and that is we have, apparently we've got a wackadoodle who's actually the president of the United States, who is in Israel right now. But not only do we have some dissension outside the White House, now we've got some troubling dissension inside the White House. I'm going to say this. It gets -1 for Yorick continuing to be a whiny little bitch.
Hey, now.
And obsessed with a girl who clearly broke up with him.
Okay.
And number 2, and I wanted to rank it lower, but this isn't the episode's fault, I guess. This is my fault. Bubba?
Yeah?
I'm starting to have some real PTSD with this show.
What do you mean?
This is just so reminiscent of our political situation right now. I mean, on one hand, I'm happy that, their plan is to keep the wackadoodle away from the presidency, which theoretically is a good idea. But we just had somebody try to steal the presidency for the same thing, which was reasons. And so I see where the show is going with it here, but it is kind of justifying the fact that we want to usurp the usual chain of custody here for reasons, just because we don't like it. So, Bubba,
yeah,
just to break it down for real, like bring it down to the real right now.
Yeah,
I know we're going to make this light. Like, I'm worried that this period of time here until our next election for the House is going to be the sanest time politically in this country for the next 15 years. And it's already not great. So I got PTSD. This is not helping my mental state. And so it's not really the show's fault. The show's doing a great job. But yeah, it's hurting my psyche. So what about you? What do you think?
What do I think about your psyche? Well,
Well, I know. You've got your own long-standing feelings about my psyche. Let's leave it out of it. What are your feelings about the show?
Well, Catfish, I think this was the best episode of these first 3. Now, it still doesn't have a moment as great as the last 10 minutes of episode 1, where all those men had a little brain trouble. But I think it's the best of the 3. So I'm going to give this 9, what I like to call double M's out of 10.
Double M's?
Yeah, I call it double M because it's for momentary medals. You are going to get a medal, and you'll get to feel good about it momentarily.
The funny thing is I thought they were going to get a medal, and then they were going to get metal inside of them. But, Agent 355, who continues to be my all-star for this show.
Oh, yeah. She's great.
She likes to practice what I like to call plausible deniability.
Oh, man, I love it. Let me say that, Catfish, what's funny is this episode 3 really made me feel like I needed to agree with you stronger about episode 2 and about those time jumps, because I very much would have loved to have seen the first days after this traumatic world disaster. I wanted to see how people reacted, how people built to this. And it feels like we should have had that. That should have been episode 2. Last week should have been episode 3. This should have been episode 4. But this darn episode is so darn good. It's just good. It's just tension. I mentioned this last week. Yorick, who is the focus of the graphic novel, of the comic series, he really is just a player here. And what they seem to have done with him, it's almost like they're making a commentary where in a lot of entertainment, in a lot of our entertainment for the last 100 years, you might have in a show like this a woman being overtly emotional. And, that obviously was kind of a trope that was disparaging of women in some ways, you could say. And this show is subverting it by having Yorick be this mess, being the overly emotional one. And while at times that makes it not fun to watch Yorick, I do think that everything in this show is working. And Agent 355, like you said, is working. And so this is a good show. If this is where we're going with this first season or where the show's going, I'm here for it. I like it.
I feel like I need to make a double C.
Double C?
Yeah, catfish comment.
Oh.
We've done about 200 podcast episodes, and only now have I realized that I could use the double connotation to say something. Always growing, still growing and learning. So it's funny, the people, in the first, when we were talking about the first episode, you noted some social media complaints before people had made the show. And it's always dangerous because some people are complaining that, we're great, we're going to have another show that's focused on the man, which this show is clearly, and I think rightly and excellently, not completely focusing on the man. So yes, so it's always good to watch something before you criticize it, because you can actually criticize it for what it actually is instead of what you imagine it is.
Okay. Listeners, we are going to break down this third episode of the first season of Y: The Last Man. We're going to give you everything you want. You got to help us out a bit, though.
Probably not.
You got to help us out, though. If you have yet to subscribe to this podcast, we are begging you. We are pleading you. We are like Yorick begging to see Beth. We need you to subscribe to this podcast. We always joke you cannot unsubscribe to this podcast in anger if you aren't already subscribed. So please do it.
Subscribe and then unsubscribe.
Let me say that we want you to subscribe. You'll also be able to check out all our other podcasts. Currently, if you're listening to this in September of 2021, you'll see that we're covering another show that's also on Disney Plus, Star Plus around the world, on the app Hulu here in the United States, entitled Only Murders in the Building. We've covered a bunch of great shows like The Crown, Lovecraft Country, Babylon Berlin, Dark, The Last Kingdom, Dublin Murders, The Terror. We've also covered some shows that aren't quite as good, like The Rook. And this December on our Parsec Passion podcast feed, we'll be covering the new show, The Book of Boba Fett. We are so excited about that. And heck, just next year on our Joffrey podcast feeds, we're going to be covering the Game of Thrones, the next TV show in the Game of Thrones. So please subscribe, like, if you could even take time to review the podcast on the way you hit it. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon, please leave a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a review. We need it so much. Catfish, are you ready to dive into episode 3?
Let me just take some calming pills so that I can pretend this is not what's actually happening in our country already.
Well, Catfish, who do you want to start off with? I think we can break this off into our former press secretary, Nora. We could jump into Agent 355's total wonderful ass-kicking storyline. Or we could deal with Yorick and the president and or Kimberly. What do you think?
Let's start with Nora, because right now her storyline is building. Clearly, she's going to be far, far more important as we go along. But right now, her storyline is simmering in the boiling pot. It's heating up, heating up, heating up. We can't quite put the pasta in yet.
Man, I don't know. I think this storyline is about to blow, and I love this simmering tension. Nora, like who is winning the apocalypse versus who is losing the apocalypse. Nora is losing. This is tough. So last week in episode 2, we saw her trying to get into what I believe now actually is the Pentagon, into the command center. Her name wasn't on the list. She had to turn around and walk back home with her daughter. It seems that in her neighborhood, I'm guessing, everybody is communally gathered in one house and they're in trouble. There's no food except for Slim Fast, and I don't even know if you count Slim Fast as food. They say when the snow melts, there's not going to be any water. Guess what? Everybody there seems to be heading south, and Nora is going to get left behind because she doesn't bring anything to the table. Apparently, nobody needs a press secretary in the apocalypse. Ouch. Let's just talk about this beginning section, and this is like that movie Falling Down. This is like we are seeing somebody who is about to break, and it is painful. It is tough to watch, but it's also fascinating. What did you think about this first part?
I still think it's a slower build than you do, but I'm here for this. I'm fascinated. They're really giving us some good hints. We see it from her point of view, and I think a slow build is important here, only because if I think she's going to be who she ends up being in the comic, or if she ends up being the character from the comic that I think she's going to be, I think a slow build is important so that we can end up justifying her actions in the comic.
You know, Catfish, let's put ourselves in Nora's shoes right now. What is going to be your worth in the apocalypse? Are they going to have a need for podcasters in the apocalypse? How do we make sure that you and I don't get left behind? What would you pitch to these people who are about to leave? Nora couldn't get in the car. There wasn't enough space. How are you going to get in the car?
Well, I would say, listen, there's going to be some tough times ahead where you're going to need somebody who is a smooth talker, who's going to be able to get you things that you would not be able to get otherwise.
Okay.
Unfortunately, she wasn't a good, smooth enough talker to convince them that she should go with him. So,
you don't think she could have typed up a press release to point out all the good reasons to take her on the caravan?
She needs to stand there and bang on the table. You, Newsmax, go.
Hey, now. Man, Catfish, I don't know what I would pitch. I know that I would do anything, even, kind of blackmail people. I would do anything. You've got to get out of there. If there's no food and you don't think there's going to be any water once all the snow melts and there'll be nothing left, you do have to go somewhere else. This is incredibly tough for Nora. And then...
Well, I thought it was going to be... I mean, you made it seem like she really needed some assistance, but she found a car and they're getting the heck out of there. So
if you want to jump to that car she found, which is low on gas, not looking good. But let's get to, what I think is really, you're going to get your breaking point with this. So she and her daughter, they believe there might still be some protein powders back in the garage. But of course, the mom says, I'm pretty sure I looked. But she does take her daughter. They drag their suitcases home. They are home, and there was this interesting moment where Nora sees an action figure, probably, we're going to assume, maybe one of her son's action figures, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figure without an arm. And so she reattaches the arm. And
whoa, are you telling me she reattached an arm to an action figure? And she did not put that as one of her top bullet points for why she should be brought along?
Right. Okay. But while she's doing this is just horrific. Her daughter sees the body of the dad and the brother out in the back lawn, sees crows attacking it. Oh my God. So she goes and it's like, I'm not going to allow these crows to eat my dad, eat my brother. So she grabs a weapon, but then while she's running towards it, she falls. I thought she was going to die. I thought, oh my God. But instead she F's up her leg really bad. Ooh, this daughter could still be in some trouble. Oh, my Lord. Nora somehow bows to her daughter's wishes and decides that she's going to bury her husband and child. And then a vulture shows up. Oh, my God. This is horrific / this is great television. Oh, my God. What happened there with the song? She gets in the car that doesn't have any gas. What happens there, Catfish? She gets in and either the radio goes dead or man, it is just not her day, not her life, not her year. This is tough.
I was a little confused by this point because the radio comes on. And I thought that was because kind of earlier in the episode, the president was trying to convince somebody to get the power going up again. And so I thought that you can see I'd be justified in thinking that even though they were talking about it, we didn't hear the power went up, that it had gone back up, because a lot of things have just been, they've talked about, and then all of a sudden they happened in the background without us seeing them any further. So somebody somewhere had power and was playing some music. I hope they're still paying royalties. And then it goes out.
Just brutal.
So someone was wasting power on music.
Well, you say this, wasting power on music. I think you might have to do something to keep people's spirits up somehow. I mean, this is horrific. This is terrible. I feel like, I can't remember the character of Nora specifically from the comic because we read it 17 years ago, but I think we are seeing a female version of the movie Falling Down, and I am here for it. I think it's tense. I am real worried of what Nora's going to do once that snap finally happens. And so, once again, why did I go up to a 9 out of 10? Just loved it. Just thought this was great.
I love it too.
All right, where to next, buddy?
Well, if we're going to go in my order,
yeah.
I think even though we don't see too much of this person, but this is definitely an inciting incident. We see the real president, Regina, the usurper. That is a great moment, usurper Regina. And she's like, well, if that's true, I like how she assumes everything. This person already is like figured out in her entire head, even though she's fractured. She got a fractured skull, probably a little out of it. We don't know whether she is going to have to wear an eye patch for the rest of her life. But already she's like, if that's true, I'm the president of the United States. And already she like then embraces her power. Give me some more water now.
Dang, is that crazy? When we cut, and there wasn't, help me out, was there a graphic on the screen to let us know, hey, we've cut to Tel Aviv, or did we have to kind of, there was?
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of missed it.
I thought there was.
I looked down for a second, and then when I looked up and I saw this doctor who was speaking in Hebrew, I kind of assumed as much. I mean, this twist is so great. The fact that when you wake up from a fractured skull and you've been how many days did the show tell us? How many days? I mean, at least 66 days out of it.
Yeah.
Oh man, I loved it. I thought it was so great.
The other thing is that, of course, if there's for them to have kind of introduced who she was, and for us to find out the danger, of course, would have been clunky for them to do it ahead of time. But it is much better afterwards that we're like, oh my goodness, there's somebody else, and then we find out. Ooh, wackadoodle.
Yeah, now help me remember, Catfish. Is there a storyline like this in the comic series?
I don't remember a storyline like this in the comics.
I remember going around the world and seeing places like Tel Aviv, but man, oh man, is this good.
There were lots of other problems, but again, we followed Yorick around for the most part in the comics on his adventures with someone I don't want to kind of ruin it here. Right. I don't want to. But we followed Yorick a lot around on his and kind of would go back to the White House. But it was less on the political situation and more on let's figure out how Yorick is going to bring us the key to bringing back more men.
Oh, man, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. And the fact that she is, as you describe her, a wackadoodle. Man, this is great. Man, this is perfect.
Well, she's got to get back first. And,
Do you have to get back to be president? I mean, she is president, right? Like, yes, it makes sense that she'll want to get back to the country that she's president of. But, you know, even if you're not in the United States, I think you're still president.
Ooh, that is a good point, that she could start a battle for control of power without even being there.
Oh, I love it.
You know what? I mean, depending on transportation to Tel Aviv, it seems to me that this new person might also be due a presentation of a medal by Agent 355.
Oh, man, that is...
Here's your Presidential Medal of Freedom. Freedom from life.
Catfish, is that going to be the hit? Like, literally, it's like, who's going to get the medal this week?
Yeah. We may need to add another bit. Medal of Honor winner for the week. Who deserved a medal this week?
Oh, I love it. Listeners, you know, we've been talking about, hey, how would we get on the caravan if we were in Nora's shoes? Go ahead and, once again, interact with us. Write us on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us at PHQ. That's the word double. The single letter P is in podcast. The letters HQ for headquarters at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram. Facebook.com/PHQ. YouTube, go ahead and leave some comments. We want to hear from you. Do you have a nominee for who we should award the medal to this week? Or a way that you can get on that caravan and not be left behind. This is so fun. This is the show we want. I wonder if filming in an actual pandemic of COVID-19 is preventing them from showing these big scenes of, you know, the real mob outside the White House or outside the Pentagon, the real scenes from around the world. But this type of drama is just juicy. I love it.
I love it too.
Now, Catfish, I know you want to go in order, but I do think we need to jump to Agent 355 because I mentioned
You would have ruined the best. She's the best.
Well, listen, Catfish. I mentioned
All right,
at the end of episode 2, the end of the episode 2, where those 2 helicopter pilots are looking at the president hugging Yorick and saying, "What's going on here?" And Agent 355 is like, come with me. We're going to do this. This was one of the highlights, if not the highlight of the episode. Now, I'm going to mention something that I always mention. The very first scene where Agent 355 has brought these pilots into like a very small, tight conference room. There's no music in the scene. And I'm thinking, well, this should be pretty tense. What's going on? And I was thinking, is she going to ice these pilots? But in that first scene, there wasn't. Later on, she goes back to them, and in the second scene, there was music. It was like, okay, this is getting tense.
You know, you were right, and I was wrong. I didn't think it would be laid out as bare, but they have the pilots lay it right out. Mm-hmm. How is the president's son alive? And now she's the president. They're not very subtle. They basically asked for it.
They asked for it. That's not nice, guys.
They were the problem in the room.
Oh,
they were the problem in the locked room for sure.
So, like I said, in these first couple of scenes, I thought, oh, she's going to ice them. This is so crazy. But then she gives them the medal. She talks them up. She's pumping them up. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay. So we're going to see that Agent 355 can, she's not only successful at kicking ass or bombing Nazis, she can also use her mind to, disarm a situation, as you will. Mm-hmm. But then at the end, when they get those helicopters and you suddenly realize, oh, wait, she and Yorick are in a different helicopter. Oh, I could see it coming, and I loved it. Hell to the yeah.
I'm sorry. I saw it coming from the beginning.
We watched it separately, the medals didn't trick you? The medals didn't trick you? Okay.
They didn't trick me at all. I knew right away that they were in a gots-to-go situation. And the way 355 kept confidently saying, I don't know, she said it at least 2 times, don't worry, I got this. And 355, let's just put it this way. You know when they say, there's the old euphemism, when you're a hammer, you see everything as a nail.
Yep.
355 is a hammer, and they were the nails. I knew those pilots were Gone. They gone.
Well, okay, let's talk about it. This is a crazy world. Why does 355 do it? I mean, you're in 355's shoes. Yes, you report to the president. Yes, you report to the president. Yes, you do. You're kind of following a chain of command. But I'm positive nobody told her, "Hey, take care of these pilots that way," or why?
You don't need to tell her.
Okay, well, why do you think 355 trusts the president? Why isn't 355 having some of these questions that the pilots did? Would you have had, if you were in that scenario, would you have had that thing about, wait, every man died? Except the newly found president's son. The president's son who, when you're alone with him, is saying, oh, wow, my mom became Speaker of the House and then president. That's great for her. Why do you not have any questions if you're Agent 355?
Are you saying that Agent 355 should be thinking that this person who is so far down on the chain would kill every man except for her son just to become president and put the world in? Like, I think it's a...
It is a ridiculous idea, but it's an idea. I think if I was in the Agent 355 shoes, it's an idea which I could at least say, yeah, I could see why some people would think that's pretty darn weird.
Well, I could see. I mean, I'm not saying that she doesn't see. I mean, to me, it seems she's very clear-eyed about that people will think that, which is why she's so desperate to get. She's like, I need to get him out of here. Mm-hmm. We need to get him unseen. We need to get him on the road. He is not safe here. It's not safe here for him. It's not him being here is not safe for you. I think she's very clear-eyed about the danger that he represents, and also clear-eyed that, like, it seems unlikely that this woman could have engineered a worldwide extinction event of men to become president of the shit show.
You know what? That should be everybody's we should turn it into a reality show. Who wants to be president of this mess?
Of this shit show. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, because Agent 355 does have scenes with Yorick and does have scenes...
Hashtag hero.
Well, Hero wasn't in this episode. So
No, she's the hashtag real hero.
Oh, real hero. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to now move to kind of the chunk of the episode, and that is Yorick with his mother, the newly appointed president of the United States?
You mean usurper Brown?
Right. Well,
now let me say this first of all.
Okay.
Because we haven't talked about this yet. There are a few things going on that are a little confusing to me. Is that we've seen the way that she has been represented, President Brown. I mean, obviously she's been put in a tough situation.
Oh, yeah,
it's a little bit above her pay grade, but she seems like she's able to do the most. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen her really be kind of power grubbing. At least in the pre-times, it didn't feel like she was like power grubbing. But something is going on with it. The show is showing us two things. One, her children are horrible people, and they hate her. So what? They're like, but we don't see any reasons for this. I don't see like what are the reasons?
Catfish, I think that's a very comical way to describe this, but I don't think either are true. I think you say her children are horrible. Her children are messy human beings. I think somebody who has an affair with a married person is a messy human being, and maybe that act is horrible, but I don't think the whole act defines the person. Your second point,
the killing.
Your second point is they hate her. Hello, when Yorick saw his mom in last week's episode, the first thing he did was give her a deep hug. He slept with her tonight. He loves his mom.
That's only because he is such a baby. No, they both, Hero and Yorick, when they got together, they trash talked their mom so bad. Hero's like, I would rather be stuck in New York without any food and maybe drown rather than go back to that woman because she's so horrible. She basically has to be guilted to go back. Like they really speak about her in ways that it's odd that the show doesn't show. That in other words, I don't see the reasons why they hate her so much.
Listeners, I want you to write at WPHQ on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook.com/WPHQ and tell me if you agree with Catfish's rather stringent view of this or my view where it's just messy, real-life human beings. Of course, people can
that's
have
fine if you don't agree
mother,
with me that
give
her
me a
children
break.
are
He slept
horrible,
with his mom. He just doesn't have the drive. Like he's a completely different person than his mom, and his mom's probably always been pushing him to get his act together. But and his mom, remember, was the one who wasn't going to loan him money for the rent while his dad did. So maybe he has a natural more affection for his
mid-20s.
He's 27. Upper 20s is what I'd say.
Right.
So
it's about time he start. Listen, even his girlfriend realized he was a bad bet. I mean,
you are so tough on this, listeners. You decide this. We are debating this pretty much. So. Okay, so Yorick, once again, I described him as they're presenting him as this kind of emotional mess. Everybody is fine, I think, in this scenario, being an emotional mess. One thing that he can't do is he can't control his monkey, and that's not a euphemism. His monkey gets loose, and he's chasing after Ampersand. When who wakes up? It's Drunky McGee, the former First Lady.
That is horrible.
She's following this noise. How is she? She was watching TV, excuse me. Wasn't that right? And I'm like, wait, they're still playing TV shows here in the apocalypse? Once again, maybe with the radio, maybe with TV.
They might have closed circuit in the White House.
Well, they're not in the White House. I'm pretty sure that they hinted that the White House was burned down and they're in, this set doesn't look anything like the White House. I think they're in the Pentagon or the quote unquote secure location.
Okay.
And so anyway, First Lady is following his sound. I loved it. It's a great tense scene. Once again, it's a very, suddenly, even though it's a world-defining event, it's a very intimate show, a very intimate scene about is the former First Lady going to see Yorick? And sure enough, she does. And then the magician Yorick, who can get out of handcuffs, he does a real quick, almost disappearing act. And then Agent 355 and the president have to convince the former First Lady that she's dreaming this. What do you think about this scene? Did you find it tense, or did Yorick and Ampersand drive you crazy?
I feel bad because This woman is like just trying to, she's just trying to live her life. Things have been destroyed. She seems like a good person. She's not trying to cause waves. And what do they do? What do they do? They do the why can't I remember the word? It's so horrible right now. When you convince someone that reality is not true.
Is that gaslighting? Is that?
Yes, exactly. They gaslight her. I mean, that's just horrible.
Well, what is your other option? Should Agent 355
give her a medal?
Exactly. Oh.
Hey, you wanna take a helicopter ride over the Pentagon?
I mean, this is becoming like this is becoming like Agent 355 is becoming Oprah. You get a medal. You get. Now, how about this?
Is the best. Yeah,
the show is very interesting. I mentioned that I've come around to your thinking, Catfish, that we shouldn't have jumped forward these 60-odd days. We should have seen that mess. And I suddenly started thinking they weren't in this episode, but Hero and her friend Sam. Remember how in episode 2, Sam gave that story about, hey, everybody's, attacking me for who I am and this kind of stuff. But it was like a monologue. It was Sam telling Hero some of the things he had experienced. And I thought to watching this episode, I'm like, we really needed those days after the event went down, the immediate hours and immediate days after the event went down. And I thought, it would have been brutal to show, but we should have seen that scene of Hero being confronted and Sam being confronted and Sam having to explain himself. Yeah. And I thought that would have been so powerful. And
that, by the way, was another reason why this episode was ranked so highly, because it had hashtag no hero, hashtag real hero, Agent 55.
Brother. Okay. Well, but I thought this.
Let me just say, I hate Hero and Yorick equally.
Equal opportunity there, Catfish.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but what I was going to say is one thing that this episode was able to do is Yorick learns that his dad died. And I think that is a very powerful kind of message. And he is, once again, emotionally messed up. He's lying to his mom, telling his mom that he and Beth were engaged because he's so messed up.
Oh, my God. I mean,
what did you think of that?
God.
Obviously, you're groaning, but can you understand it at all? Or are you just like, Yorick, alas, you're a mess?
Yeah. Listen, this is, yeah. They're not good people. Yorick and Hero.
Oh my God.
I don't know what he is. He's still trying to chase down Beth. A lot of people are dealing with a very, very serious situation. And I understand people handle things differently. And of course, it's different for him because he's the only man left, but he really hasn't. Obviously we're talking about how, he's going to kind of grow in this series, and it's very early, but he's still, I think at some point you would realize, like, all right, I'm the only dude left. I have some responsibility, and not to essentially blackmail his mom. That's what he does. It's blackmail. He's like, all right, help me find Beth, because we're engaged and she didn't break up with me because I'm a slacker loser. Help me find Beth, and then, maybe I'll help you with your whole keep our species alive business.
Oh, brother. Okay, but to be fair to the show, Yorick of the comic has a lot of this. Let's not kid ourselves. This is true to the Yorick of the comic.
This is absolutely true to the Yorick of the comic, but they presented us with a completely different situation here than the Yorick in the comic. The Yorick in the comic, his girlfriend, who he proposed to and did not hear an answer because the cell service went out just at that time.
Right.
She's in Australia. He's trying to get to her. In the Yorick of this show, his girlfriend told him, I want nothing to do with you.
Now,
and it's all over.
You don't, Catfish, you don't think she was playing hard to get? I'm kidding. That is a terrible joke, listeners. You can only unsubscribe if you've subscribed. I apologize.
She's playing impossible to get.
Hey, Catfish, I want to go to a decision that President Brown has made. I think the show, you keep saying that President Brown is presented pretty rough. I think President Brown is being...
No, see, I'm sorry. That's differently than what I'm saying.
No,
what I'm
it's not.
saying is the show represents... The President Brown I see in the show is an interesting, good person who's struggling with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But so that what I'm saying is I don't understand why her children hate her.
Okay, look, whatever. Let's move past that point. President Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
You've got a lovely daughter. Yes.
Agent Brown. President Brown. She's making a lot of tough decisions. But what did you think of her decision to allow her assistant, this is a character named Christine, to be part of the inner circle and know that Yorick was alive? Because I saw that and I thought, oh boy, President, you should not tell anybody. What'd you think?
No, I think it's medal time for Christine.
Oh my, Catfish, are you going to give everybody a medal?
I mean, everybody who knows about Yorick, yeah, they get a medal. And then Yorick gets a medal. As soon as we can figure out what's going on and why he's still alive, medal for Yorick.
Terrible. There's a debate on what are we going to do with Yorick, how are we going to go. We have a list of approved geneticists and people who can study this. And Agent 355 kind of takes this mission into her own hand, and she handpicks, literally, a character by the name of Dr. Allison Mann, who might be working with foreign agents to fund her research. Hello? What's going on? What did you think of that move?
As far as I remember, it's unremarked in the comic book that it's kind of a groaner, that her last name is Mann. But so what I like the show did have Yorick comment on it in his super whiny way, but still I think it was a good comment. We'll see how they set her up. In the comic, it was clear why she was persona non grata. And then, the reason why she was persona non grata in the comic was essentially rendered null and void by the event. And so we'll see what happens here with her. But definitely we need to find out what's going on. I believe that President Brown has stayed consistent. We got to deal with the people that we have alive before we can figure out what to do. And it's more Agent 355 who's like, okay, let's track this down because we got to get Yorick out of here. So at least I don't feel like President Brown is being like, okay, we're going to follow this because Yorick's my son. It's more just like, okay, I agree. He's got to get out of the White House. So once again, I find her to be incredibly consistent and sympathetic and not the kind of person that her children should hate.
Let's just go to these two kind of points about Yorick. Now, in the comic, like we've mentioned, in the comic, Yorick is like, I want to find Beth. I got to get to Beth, yada, yada, yada. The one thing I thought the show did well here is it kind of gives some reasons. First of all, Yorick believes he's on borrowed time because he thinks his brain could explode at any moment. Like, why did he survive? Well, he just got lucky and his time's coming is what he's thinking. And I think that is great. Yorick is also dealing with survivor's remorse. And I'm not sure we really saw that in the comic, so I really liked it. And I really liked this line that President Brown said to him where she's like, "You're it, kiddo." I thought that was good. I thought those were good moments in a character you have really grown to hate. You have really grown to groan at. We see President Brown in, once again showing her worth. We're hearing stories about this Regina who woke up in Tel Aviv being cray-cray, but President Brown is trying to show her worth. There's this off-screen character named Sharon who we desperately need to get power plants back up and running. Sharon is broken. Sharon's not doing well. Yet President Brown gets on that speakerphone. There's no option. She has to get this off-screen character Sharon back to work. And she does it. I think that shows that, once again, who knows what her family issues are, but President Brown can rise to the occasion. And President Brown, the show is presenting us as an audience, President Brown is the one we want in charge when crap goes down, rather than this cray-cray Regina. So, of course, that's going to lead us into our final character we need to focus on, and that is Amber Tamblyn's character, Kimberly, the daughter of the former president. Kimberly, let's focus on her. She has had enough of President Brown's, BS keeping her out of everything. Kimberly is trying to, once again, get people on her team. She goes to Agent 355, and she's trying to get inside knowledge, trying to build a bond with Agent 355. I love that she's trying to build this connection, and you can tell from this wonderful performance by Ashley Romans that Agent 355 is not buying it at all. She'll put on the show, but she is not on Kimberly's team at all. I love that scene.
I mean, Kimberly has the best, like, I'm going to sidle up to you and say nice things, but make it very clear I'm trying to pump you for information. I mean, it's not subtle, because what's nice about it is, some people you'd be like, well, let's try.
Yeah.
When you're trying to get information out of somebody, let's try to disguise a little bit more. But Kimberly has a nice way of, like, also maybe kind of gently making it obvious what she wants information, because she's also being very subtly and threatening. It's very delicious. Especially she does it more with President Brown, where it's like, that scene with President Brown was so tense, where she's like, of all the people in the world, why did my mom imagine she saw Yorick? And you're like,
No, and the way she took her hand. Oh my God.
Oh.
So, okay.
Oh, it's so deliciously evil.
Kimberly, well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about Kimberly's motivation. Let's get to it. She believes, and I guess it's not believes, is that her thought process is the Republicans won the White House. And now, through this ridiculous chain of events, this tragic chain of events, it doesn't feel like they have a seat at the table. She wants to be in the room where it happens. And so she's stealing crayons. She's building up her team. And I thought it was a great shot of her marching her troops down the hallway towards President Brown, as President Brown's team was marching the other way down the hallway. Also, there's this weird bit about Kimberly stealing crayons. Is that correct? From the little nursery they had set up? Some people lost less. Some people lost less. Some people lost more. She's saying that when she's at the memorial wall with the president. Great. I mean, that is a way you add that scene to Black Hawk Down scene, and this is a great way to end an episode, isn't it?
It is. It is so menacing. It's menacing. I mean, you just have to think about it this way, because there were a lot of people. I don't want to say if it was any of the people talking on the podcast right now, but a lot of people during a certain presidency were like trying to look and see, like, how many people would have to go before we had a reasonable person in the White House. And I think it was like at one point it was like the 38th person that was in the line of succession was not horrible. But think about this. Yeah, you're in power. Your party is in power, duly elected, and then due to an accident, somebody way, way down the chain has taken over.
Yeah.
So it's reasonable for them to say, like, listen, you weren't elected, and I know that this is the line of succession, but come on, when you get this down this far, it doesn't seem reasonable. You can understand why people would think that.
Oh, yeah.
And another thing that's sort of mentioned in the comics, and I don't know if they'll mention it here, that I found interesting, that's kind of a true factoid, at least it was when the comics were written. It may not be true now, but of all the people who have passed away in office, when their spouses ran for their seat, they won at least the first time.
Oh, yeah. That's still true today a lot of times, yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of times. But, I mean, at least at that point, it was, like, true, like, every single time. So, again, they have reason to assume that our husbands ran, we share their belief systems, we should be in charge. So I can see their point of view about it. And now when you add that we got Wackadoo out there who's really in charge,
Regina,
then you really have to say that, like, you don't have a right to be here.
Where do you see Kimberly going? Where do you see this character going? Do you see her successfully blackmailing and getting that seat at the table? This is juicy stuff. Where do you see Kimberly's character arc? Is she going to get a medal?
I feel like there. Well, and here's the problem: the person who's delivering medals is out on the road.
Yes.
Trying to deal with Yorick and Dr. Mann and trying to solve this problem. I literally think, since they're focusing more on the White House here, that I think we could see a situation where we've got a change of leadership.
A coup d'etat.
Well, but is it even a coup if it would be a coup if they did it and there wasn't somebody who was actually higher up in the line of succession.
Well, then maybe it's a Kim data.
Remember, you can't unsubscribe unless you subscribe.
Hey. So Catfish,
talk to me.
They released 3 episodes at once. I think because they knew they wanted us to get to this point and be like, "Oh wow, this is some juicy stuff." And so they've got it.
Right.
They've got me hooked. How about you?
They have got me hooked. This is the same kind of thing that happened to me with Only Murders in the Building, where maybe if they had spread the first 3 episodes over 3 weeks, I wouldn't still be watching.
Right.
But when I watched the first 3, bam, 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 I was like, all right, I'm in. The first one, I was like, all right, I'll keep watching. The second one, I was like, and then after the third one, I was like, bam, I'm in. So yes, I'm definitely in after all this. I'm just concerned that my entertainment options are giving me what I like to call mental distress.
Listeners, once again, we are begging for interactivity. Please subscribe. Please write us and tell us how you feel about these first 3 episodes of Why the Last Man. Catfish, we're going to have another great segment from our good friend Double M Matt Murdick on the music on this show. But before we get to that, why don't we play the first 2 of our 3 fun games we like to play at the end of an episode. It's our Whoa Man of the episode. The greatest woman in the episode, what they did, how they shined a bright light. So, Catfish, who is your Whoa Man of the episode?
You know, sometimes in the NBA or the NFL, they get tired of giving people the MVP, so they give someone the MVP who doesn't deserve it just to change things up.
Change it up.
I'm not going to do that. If they're going to continue to make Agent 355 a super badass, I have no choice but to make her the Whoa Man of the episode. My hands are tied, Bubba. Plus, I mean, do you want to cross Agent 355? Because I do not.
I do not want to cross Agent 355 in
Okay, so
any
you
way.
gave it to 355 too. So
No.
move on to the next one.
No. I have a different winner for my Whoa Man of the episode.
You're living life on the edge, Bubba.
I am.
Who is your Whoa Man of the episode?
I'm going to give it to the real president, Regina Oliver.
Usurper.
No, she's the real president. And why did she get my Whoa Man of the episode? Because she got to sleep for like 70 days. And I'm like so jealous.
Good point. It's a good thing she's rested up because she's got some usurping to do.
Love it. So those are ours. Listeners, if you have any you want to nominate or give the award to, please let us know. Catfish, what's up next?
Next is the Yorick. I knew him, sorta.
Yeah.
Ways in which we are like or not like Yorick from this episode.
Oh, well, let me give you mine. I am like Yorick in that, like Yorick, I hate every photo of myself. Yorick is looking at the memorial wall. He sees it appears to be maybe his high school or his college graduation photo, and he's a whiny little dude. And so because of that, that's Yorick. I knew him, sorta, of the week for me. How about you?
Man.
What do you got?
Well, you know, this show's making me face some hard truths about myself, especially this specific bit right here.
Okay.
Because like Yorick, I'm also a whiny little bitch who can't help but mansplain punctuation.
Oh, man. That is so hashtag semicolon.
Well, at least it's not hashtag M dash.
Oh man, I love a good M dash, man. I love it.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't love a good M dash?
Guys, we're going to be back in a bit with our suspect of the week. But right now, let's go to our great friend, our great musical insight from our buddy Double M Matt Murdick, who's at Musical Concepts on Twitter, who's looking at some of this music, which has started to pick up in these episodes of episode 2 and 3. Matt, let's hear it.
Welcome to the staccato Steffenstatter section. That's a mouthful, isn't it? And it's a triple S. I call it staccato because what I do when I record, I do it separately from Bubba and Catfish, and staccato means to separate. And Steffenstatter, of course, Ernest Steffenstatter is our composer, so that's why I came up with that silly name. Anyway, I digress. Sometimes it is difficult to determine what kind of approach that a composer and the showrunners or a composer and the directors have decided on in terms of how they're going to tell the narrative musically. Are they going to use themes for characters? Are they going to use themes simply for narrative events? Are the themes simply going to represent different kinds of emotions? Are they just through composed themes, meaning that there's no particular theme, they're just creating a new piece of music for each incident that happens? And I feel like that after watching the first 3 episodes, I can probably decide that the concept that they've decided on is the kind of more conceptual idea of how is this related to the narrative rather than how is this related to the character. I found 3 recurring themes, one that had no variation and 2 that did have variations. All are minor, meaning the harmony, and also means that they ain't happy themes. But then again, this is not a happy time. And I want to go through these 3 real quickly so that you can get back to Bubba and Catfish. But the first one is the simplest. It has no variation whatsoever. It's just a single line over a bed of harmony sometimes, or sometimes even on its own. It's in B minor. It sounds like this. Why call this a theme? Because I've heard it in 2 different instances in 2 different episodes, and so it's recurring. You might just call it a motif, meaning it's a snippet of a theme. That's possible also. But when it occurs is right after Beth leaves Yorick and he slams his hand against the wall and hurts himself in the very first episode. We also hear it, however, when Agent 355 is going through her box in the second episode after she's found out that all of her cohorts are gone. So the possible narrative or emotional context with this would be, in both cases, these characters feel a sense of abandonment. Yorick feels like he's been abandoned by Beth, and Agent 355 feels like that her whole organization is gone. So that would make you feel abandoned too. So that's what I feel like that's going on. We'll need more data to see if we hear this again to figure out exactly what it might mean, why artists chose to do this, or the directors chose to place this kind of music in these 2 particular situations. Now, a second big theme that we get is one that has a really huge version of it in the very first episode. It's while the event is happening, and it's mostly happening as we're following Hero, although I know that things kind of cut back and forth there. But Hero seems to be the focus of this theme, not because it's a character on her, but because she's kind of on the ground floor seeing it all happen to normal people. And what she's witnessing is horrific, isn't it? Epic in its own kind of sick way. It sounds like this. And there's some variations to this theme throughout the 3 episodes as well. Here's one of them. And that's the one that we actually predominantly hear in the second and third episode as opposed to the big version that we have. And I call this a variation. Even though we hear it more, I call it a variation simply because it's not the version that we heard first. I always take the first version, I call that the original, and then anything else I call a variation. But it does have the same chords, it has the same emotional intent, which is, I believe, reminding us of the tragic day. There's a couple instances where that really comes into play for our characters throughout the episodes. For instance, in episode 2, when Hero returns to her lover's body in the ambulance, she's returning to the spot where the event happened for her. The same way that happens with Nora and her daughter when they return back to their house in episode 3. And what happens is it kicks into that full variation when Nora breaks her son's Ninja Turtle and then tries to put it back together, and she's very upset. Those 2 had the same kind of variation in it. And actually with Nora, a little bit of the melody was played before they got into the house. Now, there are a couple of versions that might say, well, this isn't just about returning back to the scene or the event itself, because there is one in episode 2 where during the time and right after that Nora is denied access by the army, once we get to Jennifer's desk, this kicks in as well. Then there is another one that is another slight variation even on top of that in episode 2 when Yorick actually arrives and gets off the helicopter and Jennifer is there to greet him. So you put all of that together, and I think it's still in context to the event. It's just how it's applied can't be specified to the letter. Now, there is a third theme, and I love this theme because it's got some piano parts in it sometimes. But we hear this theme in all 3 episodes, plus the really cool piano extension on it. We actually don't hear until the 2nd episode. I want to play that extension first because it lays out the chords of the piece. It lays out the harmony of the piece without actually adding the melody to it. So we heard this in the 2nd episode when Yorick was finishing painting a message for Beth, and he turns and this piano extension plays. Now, that outlines the harmony for this piece. And because we had heard it in episode 1, it's a nice variation to add to it because it gives it a little bit of life and sets up the really emotional thing of Yorick finding those pictures. But the actual main version of the theme, it does kick in there as he finds the pictures, but it was actually first heard in the very first episode, very early on, when Yorick's dad was telling Jennifer that he wanted a divorce, and then we go through the whole thing at the party with Jennifer thinking about that. And that main theme sounds like this. And if you've listened to my analysis of the main theme, there's something very similar between this theme and the main theme, the one that you hear when the credits are rolling. And what that is that despite the fact that it's minor, there is a major 4 chord. Now, minor is dark. It makes us serious. It can be sad. It can be angry or whatever. Major feels lighter. It feels happier. Or, most importantly, it can make you feel hope amidst all of this minor crap that's going on around you, right? And the last chord of that theme, in both cases, the extension and the main version of it, you get that major 4 chord at the end of the phrase. That's to give you a little bit of hope. And this theme occurs a lot. We hear it a couple of more times throughout the episodes. In episode 3, we hear it when Jennifer is saying goodbye to Yorick before she sends him away with 355. They got to get him out of there because they don't want anybody to know that he exists. And then we have the theme with that extension added to it as well when Jennifer is on the phone with Sharon and they're talking about her kids, and finally she agrees to come back to work. And it kind of bleeds into Jennifer looking at all those pictures on the wall. And then it stops, and then it picks back up again. After Kimber walks up, she talks for a little while, and then it resumes again once they start talking about quantifying the lives. Some people lost less, some people lost more, and they're kind of supporting each other as they're looking at all of these people that they've lost. And if you want to look at this conceptually, you can say that almost all of these instances where this theme occurs applies to the sense of loss of these people. You can say Jennifer having to give up her son again. You can say Kimberly's talking about all the people that everybody's lost at the end. And even to go back to the first episode, you can say, well, Jennifer is losing her husband, right? So a sense of loss is what really applies here, I think, in terms of when this theme will be used in the future, because we've seen it demonstrated that a lot. I've rambled and rambled and rambled, that's a triple R, And so it's time to turn it back to Bubba and Catfish. Thanks for listening.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
Man, he knows his stuff, unlike us. That's pretty good, Matt.
I mean, Matt, he's bringing it. He would be the MVP if it wasn't for Agent 355. Matt, you deserve a medal. Oh, I mean, a prize.
A prize.
That would make him triple M, meddled Matt Murdick.
Oh, man. R.I.P. Middled Matt Murdick. That's tough. Catfish, we give out every week, we give a suspect of the week. That is, hey, why did suddenly all the people, animals with Y chromosomes start dying? We need to know who did it and why. And so we're picking out our suspect. Based on episode 3, who do you think caused this terrible mass extinction event?
Well, I think it's pretty clear right now that it was President Brown.
What?
It's entirely reasonable to assume that she did this, that she calculated that she would take over the presidency.
Oh, no.
And somehow she saved her son and his little monkey, too, ampersand.
Oh, man.
So President Brown, that's who I'm going with this week. What about you, Bubba? Who... I know that was kind of a silly answer, so obviously you've got a serious answer.
Right.
Who is your suspect of the week?
Well, I love that you went with President Brown. Who was it? President Brown who gave the very strong nod. Yeah, ampersand is a male. We don't want to know how the president knows that. But so we're trying to figure out who would cause this mass extinction event, which would kill all the men on the earth. And I think the show, through 3 episodes, has really pointed out who this villain is.
Okay, tell me who it is.
Beth. Like, Yorick wouldn't take no for an answer. So the only way to escape him is to take some very drastic measures. But she is not going to have a shotgun wedding in any way. She is going to take care of all the Yoricks that are out there. But somehow she missed her shot.
She took her shot and she missed. I mean, that was a bad miss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because presumably, maybe she's like, well, if I got to take down 1,000, I guess 1,000 isn't so bad as long as I can get Yorick out of my life. But basically, she got everybody but him. But I love it. You know what? I'm just going to say hashtag justified.
Yorick was going to put a ring on it. She took care of that.
I love it. I would say for that, Beth deserves a medal, but not the kind that Agent 355 gives.
What are you going to get for their engagement party? What gift are you going to get, Beth?
A restraining order.
Oh, no. How unfun. Well, that's it, guys. We have talked about episode 3 of Why the Last Man here of season 1. Next week, we're going to be talking about episode 4, entitled Karen and Benji, on Jennifer's order. President Jennifer's order. Yorick and Agent 355 search for a geneticist who can unravel the mystery of how he survived. Meanwhile, Hero and Sam encounter a dangerous group of women. So Hero is coming back next week, Catfish. You got to get ready. Man, this is awesome. Listeners, we hope you are enjoying this. Once again, we hope you're enjoying this show. Only way we're going to know is if you write us and connect with us at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram. That's the word double, the single letter P for podcasts, letters HQ for headquarters, at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. For everybody here at Double P Media, my name's Bubba, and you can find me individually on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM, at Fit and Trim on Twitter.
And I'm Catfish. You can hit me up at CJGman67, your 67th favorite CJGman on Twitter. And we will talk to you next week on
Z, the podcast you watch after you've the podcast you listen to after you've watched
Why the Last Man.
You know, Catfish, after this podcast, I think you've earned a medal.
You know what I was thinking?
What?
If only Hero had spent some time with Beth, she could have taught her how to take out only the men that you want to take out.
Beth knows how to do it.
No, Hero's like, look.
Oh, sorry. Hero's focused. Yeah, Hero knows.
Yeah.
Hero was very targeted. Beth did a large spray.
I mean, I can understand why Beth was like, collateral damage is fine. I just got to get rid of this guy.
Right. As soon as Yorick said, well, I want to come to Australia with you, she's like, God, even Australia's not far enough. Let's take care of this.
Boom. I don't care how many wallabies I take down.
Oh.